All right, hello, folks, and welcome to another installment in our interview series. This is a series where we talk to professionals in the world of geology, find out more about their careers, how they got to where they were, tips and tricks they might have for those that are looking to get into that career path. And today, our guest is Tony McClain, who I met at the Rocky Mountain section meeting of GSA this past spring. Got to know him a little bit and was interested in his background. He is retired now, but he was the senior geologist and petroleum systems analyst for BP, so one of the big oil companies in the world. So thanks, Tony, for agreeing to talk with us today.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe just I like to start with people's background in terms of like where you grew up, and then how your interest in geology or maybe science in general, kind of where that came from.
Yeah. So actually, I grew up here in Oak Ridge, where I've retired to, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Oak Ridge is famous for being one of the three cities of the World War II era Manhattan Project that built the atomic bomb. They were doing uranium enrichment in Oak Ridge. Plutonium was being done in Hanford, Washington, and the weapons were being designed and built in Los Alamos, New Mexico. So Oak Ridge was a key one of the secret cities of the Manhattan Project. That's their claim to fame. So my dad worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory when I was growing up here in Oak Ridge. And so he was a scientist. His background was mining engineering for his undergraduate degree. And then he went to England and earned his PhD in rock mechanics, which it's interesting. My dad never brought his work home, never tried to influence me on my career direction or interests. And I later, when I went the direction of geology, I look back and oh, my dad probably had tons of geology as a rock mechanics expert. And somehow I got it through the DNA or something.
Yeah, he never even he wasn't trying to push it hard on you. It just kind of happened
No, that's
naturally.
right. Yeah. So anyway, I grew up in a science town. This is a town of 30,000 approximately, and probably has one of the highest PhDs per capita of any town in the country. I don't know the data on that, but I'm just guessing based
Yeah, a
on
lot of smart people walking around.
yeah. And I just assumed when I was growing up that you didn't even quit school until you had a PhD. That was the end game of school beyond high school. I didn't go on actually and get a PhD, but I stopped at the master's level. But anyway, that's the environment I grew up in. Science, I never thought probably that I'd do anything but science, other than my first passion was baseball. I was pretty sure I was going to be a pro baseball player, like probably
That was
millions.
plan A for you, right?
Yeah, like millions of other young men, I'm sure. And once I realized that was probably not going to happen, I decided I better get serious about school. And so, after a year of baseball as a freshman, I transferred to Florida State University, and I decided, well, I don't know what I'm going to major in. I just know it's going to be in the sciences. I'd kind of, based on nothing more than those beach vacations growing up, I thought maybe oceanography. And so I get down to Florida State and go talk to a counselor or a professor in the oceanography department, and find out I didn't do my homework very well, that they did not have a bachelor's degree in oceanography at Florida State.
Right. A state
But,
that's
but he,
surrounded by the ocean, right?
yeah, but he tells me, but you can get a degree in any science or even mathematics and be well prepared for a graduate degree in oceanography. So I said, well, okay, let me just this first quarter here, I'm going to take an astronomy class. I'll take the oceanography 101 just to get a flavor, and let's take a geology 10, physical geology course, first course. And so I show up to geology, the first day of class, and by the time that class is over, I'm going to be a geologist. I can't imagine spending 4 years studying anything else.
Right. Yeah, the
I
Kool-Aid, the
mean,
Kool-Aid
it,
worked with you. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just instant. This is the coolest stuff ever. And I've felt like I've had that sort of passion and interest with geology ever since. In fact, We may have talked about this at the conference, I don't know, but you know, through the years, I've obviously met lots of geologists, worked with lots of geologists, and in retirement, I'm associated with the East Tennessee Geological Society, where I meet with other, early and later career geologists and some retired geologists. And one thing I've observed throughout my life as a geologist is geologists are passionate about geology. They all just love it. You don't really run into that sort of thing from accountants or anything.
Yeah,
So
you don't meet a lot of geologists that regret their career decision, right? Like everyone's
that's right.
pretty all in on it.
That's right. That's right. So that's kind of how I stumbled into it and just in an instant was hooked.
Yeah,
Like I said, so um, I just spent a short time down at Florida State. The next year, my wife and I married that summer after that year at Florida State. My wife and I started school up at Brigham Young University, and I got my bachelor's degree there. At some point during the bachelor's degree time there, I was researching, career paths. If I step back a minute, when I was hooked on geology and said I'm going to be a geologist, I had no idea if there was jobs to be had. I just said I can't imagine studying anything else.
yeah,
So it was later that I suddenly thought, oh, I hope there's jobs at the end of this
right. Now you
geology.
got a wife and maybe a family to support, right?
Yeah. And so as I started researching that during the time of the undergraduate degree, this was early 80s. Uh, the oil industry was booming, and I learned that the good job opportunities were present at the oil industry. And so I kind of thought, man, that's probably a good direction to go. I did already have a family before I finished my undergraduate degree, one son before we left, and that was the direction I wanted to go. So um, I thought, okay, a good plan would be to get my master's degree somewhere in the oil patch. And so I went on to Texas A&M University for the master's degree, and very good decision, I think, at the time, because by the time I finished my master's degree, the oil boom was over. The jobs were already starting to become fewer and further between.
Right.
And so the fact that I was at an oil patch school that where the oil companies still came to recruit, even though hiring had started to taper off significantly. This was by the time I was finishing my master's, we're in 84, 85, and we're right on the cusp of the first major oil shock in the oil industry, which was the oil price crash of 1986. And so I landed a summer internship, my first summer during the master's program. That was the first lesson that I learned that I would pass on to anybody who's interested. And this probably holds for almost any industry that you target, not just the oil industry, but certainly the oil industry. And that is the internship is absolutely critical for landing full-time employment down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I landed an internship that first summer with
Which
Atlantic,
company? Okay,
Atlantic
sorry, you just said yeah.
Richfield. Yeah. So Arco Oil and Gas Company, Atlantic Richfield, and had a great experience there. And they actually broke protocol, as I understood it at the time. And on my last day on the job, the recruiter and hiring manager came in and offered me a full-time job upon my graduation before I even left the internship. Normally, what the pattern was, you had an internship, great. When the next fall semester's interview season comes around, be sure you interview with us. We'll
Right.
see that you're one of our interns, and we'll go that process. So,
Right.
but you didn't even make me go through that process. I didn't have to interview. I had the job offer before I went back to finish my thesis, which
Yeah.
really took some pressure off.
Right. I mean, well, that just reflects nicely on you. You were obviously pretty impressive to them, and left like quite the mark there.
It seems like it, and I mean, I was. So here's the importance of that internship. I was a good student, but I wasn't a great student. When I was finishing up my master's, there were some students that were 4.0, you know, through their bachelor's and master's degree,
Right.
didn't have an internship and struggled to find employment. I was, a 3.6 kind of
Yeah.
student, had an internship and got the offer before I finished my degree.
Well, that
So
I mean, that must have been a nice relief to know, finishing out your thesis and your graduate studies that,
yeah,
you didn't
took
have to go
all
through that. Yeah.
took all the pressure off and helped me just focus on the finishing, writing the thesis, finishing it up, and
Yeah.
moving on with life. So that was great. So
Can I
um,
ask a quick question here?
yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
going, I'm interested to know, kind of going back just a little bit. How did you know? So you tasted the geology flavor at Florida State. You transferred and finished out in Provo. But how did you know that the oil and gas, that subdiscipline of geology, like before you'd even done the internship, how did you know? I mean, that's where the careers were, but how did you know that's where your passion was? How did you know that that's, of all the geology things you could have done, did you know, or was it just kind of like, well, there's the jobs are there, and so let's just do that?
It was really more that
Yeah.
like I said, when I was early in my undergraduate degree time period, so early 80s, the oil boom was still on. Prices were high before that crash of 1986. Prices were high. Job graduates with master's degrees were taking their pick from 3 and 4 job offers, and with or without an internship, right
Right.
in the middle of a boom. And I thought, I didn't even think about researching, hydrology or
Mm-hmm.
environmental or anything else. Wow, that's where the opportunities are, and the
Right.
pay is great.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went that direction. Uh, Gratefully, I learned once I was in the industry and going to work that there was the opportunity to just really do great science with great access to incredible databases. And so, uh, if geology is the passion, which it was for me, and is, as we've discussed, for most geologists that we know, it's the science of geology itself that is our passion. You get to do just great science in and apply it in the search for oil and gas. It's kind of almost a serendipitous,
Yeah.
win
I mean,
in
just
kind of a thing for me.
it worked out really well that the thing that was kind of out there that you knew had the jobs was the thing that you kind of started focusing and heading towards. And
Right,
then once you got there and did the internship, it sounds like it just, resonated with you and just
right,
maybe, sort of solidified that decision even more.
right. Yeah, and the pieces just all kind of fell together, and just went down the path. And
Right.
so I was with Atlantic Richfield for 50. I started in the spring of '85. And was with Atlantic Richfield for 15 years, so until 2000. Interestingly, just to continue with the story of the job fluctuations, and this might be a theme you may want to explore or not. But 1 month after I started work, Arco gathered all the new hires and employees all across the company together and said, uh, price of oil continues declining, and we expect it to decline further, maybe substantially, and we're going to go through a major reorganization. And I learned, shortly thereafter that in the industry, the term reorganization, in quotes, is euphemistic for layoffs.
Right.
And I was dumbfounded. I thought, after 6 years of school and 2 degrees and landing that already sort of hard to get job, I might lose it in my first year.
Right.
And then I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I don't have anything to put on the resume if I lose this job in
There's
the
no
next few
plan B.
months.
Right.
There's no plan B. I'll have to go back to school and, either get a totally different degree or get a teaching certificate or, do something. And anyway, so it was a bit of a shock. And in my first year with Arco, following that oil price crash of '86, and then prices were down for some time, Arco actually went through two major reorganizations in my first year of employment. I survived them both, and it was a very near thing getting
Yeah.
through it. I managed to get through it. Arco, as I recall, the exploration arm of the company, where the majority of the geoscientists were employed, laid off 70% of their geoscientists in
Yeah.
those first two rounds of layoffs in my first year of employment. Anyway, that's probably more on that than we needed to do. But so in 15 years with ARCO, my first assignment was in Plano, Texas. That's where the formal training program that ARCO had at the time was run. It was kind of sister organization to their research center, which was in Plano. Then after a year of training, after those reorganizations, I was assigned to Lafayette, Louisiana. So I spent 4 years in Lafayette, working the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast onshore. Um, Following those almost 4 years in Lafayette, I transferred to Midland, Texas. So from our Midland, Texas office, I actually worked multiple basins around the onshore U.S., Arkoma Basin in Oklahoma, um, worked East Texas Basin, East Texas Field, and also worked the Permian Basin in Midland as well.
Right.
So after 15 years with ARCO, lo and behold, in probably 1999, so not quite 15 years, ARCO, the announcement was made that ARCO and BP were going to combine,
Merge. Yeah.
merge, and actually what it was BP was acquiring ARCO. And at that point, we'd been in Midland for 10 years. Our family loved Midland. It was a great family town. We loved raising the family there. We hoped actually to spend the rest of the career in Midland. And suddenly, at the 15-year point in the career, it looked like we were, facing possibility A, of losing the job, and B, if we don't lose the job, we'll undoubtedly get sent to Houston, which
Yeah.
is where BP's headquarters were. And up to that point, I had spent most of my career attempting to dodge having to go to Houston, big city. Um, so I started looking for jobs while it was going to be several months and turned out almost a year from the time of the announcement of the merger until the
Things
merger
happened.
actually
Yeah.
took place and the axe fell. And so I had a year to look. So I looked around, actually got a job offer. I kind of thought I'd hit the jackpot because they made me the offer and they said, we'll be willing to wait for you to package out from Arco at the merger and collect my severance and then start with them. If they had required me to just come immediately, then I would have had to just resign from Arco pre culmination of the merger and
Right. And like reapply basically. Yeah.
would have gotten no severance or anything for my 15 years with the
Right.
company. So I got the money and the job. And so I started at a large independent, Santa Fe Snyder was their name, there in Midland. So this was what we had hoped to do. Landed a job in Midland. We can maybe make a career here. Our kids love growing up here. We can get them through high school before we worry about being able to move again. And so I start the new job at Santa Fe Snyder, which was just down the street from my old
Yeah.
job. And in the second week of the job at Santa Fe Snyder, they gathered all their employees up together and said, Devon Energy has just acquired Santa Fe Snyder.
So I think the theme we're seeing here is oil and gas is a volatile industry, and you really don't know how long you're going to stick or how long things are going to last, right?
So that is something that you have to be cognizant of. It's a theme that continued throughout my career. Fortunately, I mean, I guess I'll just jump to the punchline now. I retired 5 years ago in 2020. Um, in almost 36 years of career, I went through 16 reorganizations.
Wow.
So if you do the math, I
That's
don't remember exactly. It was one reorg or layoff
yeah.
every 2.5
That's
years
a
or
high
so.
recurrence interval.
Yeah. So as it turns out, they would kind of come in clumps, two or three in close proximity. Then you'd have 5, 6, 7, 8 years of peace and just
Stability,
doing your
right?
job and
Yeah.
not worrying about it. But and in fairness, you know, the layoffs associated with those things are generally, between 10 and 20%. So it wasn't that you were that concerned all the time. As long as you were performing well, you kind of had some of your fate in your own hands.
Right.
Just don't be a goof off
Yeah.
and do your best
Right.
work.
You needed to be valued and they would keep you for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, uh, so I was blown away by the announcement of Santa Fe Snyder that they're being acquired. So I just left Arco after being in that merger limbo for a year, and within 2 weeks I was back in it with the new company. I got on the phone and called my old boss at Arco and told her what had just been announced. And I said, "Is there any way I could reverse this departure from Arco?"
Yeah. Can I come back?
Yeah, and she says, "Well, there's a meeting with with the president of our local Midland office this afternoon, kind of a staff meeting, leadership meeting. I'll bring it up and let you know." So 3 hours later, I get a call back. She says, "If you don't mind coming to Houston with BP, we'd love to have you back."
But you
So,
had to go to Houston.
but I had to give up on the avoid Houston goal, the career, which turned out to be just fine. Uh, so I went back uh, to Arco, knowing that it meant I was becoming in the process of becoming BP and moving to Houston, which we did in 2000. And I spent the final almost 21 years with BP in Houston, working onshore, continuing to work onshore basins as the unconventional revolution in the oil industry, in the domestic oil industry, kind of took things over.
Right.
So
Hmm.
uh, the move to Houston was great, as it turns out, career wise, and I think it was for the best. I mean, I think it worked out better than had I taken my chances with Santa Fe and survived. I think
Right.
I wound up with a better career with BP for the next 21 years than I would have had I stayed with the independent
Right.
game. So
Hmm.
um, so I don't know where that leads us. What you
Well,
want to hear next?
Well, I think the questions I have, I mean, I think that's an interesting and a valuable discussion of like, just showing kind of how the oil industry works and companies merge. And I mean, it's a very dynamic and very fluid kind of enterprise. Maybe can we back up and talk more about like what specifically you did for those not familiar with like the oil and gas industry?
Yeah.
So when you said things like, as onshore versus offshore, the Permian Basin, maybe give us a little flavor of like, whatever position in your career, but like what that meant, what you were actually doing. How were you on the
Yeah.
exploration side, the production side, and what
Yeah.
were some of the things you were doing to find that oil?
Yeah. So for the entirety of my career, I was in both exploration groups and production groups. The duties of a geologist in those two groups are essentially the same. And basically, what we do as geologists in the oil industry, day in, day out, particularly for young people who are contemplating this path, is, your goal is to collect all the subsurface data that is available to you. So you're collecting well log data. There are drill stem tests from wells where fluids are tested in existing wells. There's core data from wells in the area that you're working, well tests, production tests. How well does each well produce from which zones, which formations, et cetera. And so you gather up all this data and you build. Back when I started, you made maps by hand, contour maps
Mm-hmm.
of the subsurface. And so now that's all done on the computer, but you still need sort of the same skills so that you can QC the maps that the computer is spitting out for you. But it's all the same process, same data, and your maps of the subsurface are in the conventional oil and gas world is helping you to map petroleum traps. Where is the oil likely to be trapped?
Right.
And that's where all the science kind of comes in, is how do you figure out where the oil is likely to be trapped? So you have to have a structure that traps, or some stratigraphic relationships that form a trap
Right.
that's it's not geometric or structural. And so you build maps that illustrate the boundaries and dimensions of that trap. and by analyzing the well logs, which tell you about the properties of the potential reservoirs down there. And by properties, I mean porosity and permeability,
Mm-hmm.
thickness, and those sorts of things. You can predict uh, uh, a volume of oil and or gas that you expect would fit in the trap that you just delineated by your maps. And then you do some uh, analysis to determine what is the chance of success. Uh, and so you're analyzing the risk. It's risk
Right.
analysis
Mm-hmm.
for drilling the well, and for exploration wells, chance factors are typically anywhere from 10 to 25%. I mean, 10 to 25% chance of success of your
Right.
exploration well.
And then ultimately the money, the company puts their money where your mouth is and
That's
decides
absolutely
to
right.
build a, $100,000 whatever well to pump
Yeah,
in because you said this was a good spot or a good target. And then
that's right.
that's where you really prove your value, I suppose. Is that is
That's
that a, is
right.
that kind of a nerve-wracking thing, or do you have enough science or enough like data that you feel pretty good about it? And is it more of a team decision or is it hanging just on you?
Well, so that really right there is the romance and the excitement of a job in the industry, because there is pressure. Uh, Fortunately, you do work in exploration or development teams, so you generally, you check each other out, you bounce ideas off each other, and it's rare certainly in larger companies that you would ever be the sole reason why a company decided to drill here,
Right.
and if it failed, they're coming for you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of a team effort, and uh, you know you if you are associated with a string of you know 10 or 20 dry holes as the geologist on that team, you might be in trouble. But
Yeah, you got a
this
reputation at that point.
Yeah, but if as a team, presumably you're going to have some success mixed in there with even with these exploration type chance factors, and so I don't recall a lot of people getting picked off and
Right.
fired because of failures. The management understands it's a very difficult
Yeah, and you gotta
task.
you gotta take a swing to hit a homer, right? Going back to the
Yeah,
baseball analogy, you gotta drill
yeah,
the hole to see what's there to get the data, which might help you find the
right,
target in subsequent holes.
right, absolutely. So,
Well,
uh,
I have another quick question. It's an interesting part of, or I guess, world of geology because it's so subsurface dependent. And
yeah,
there you are in Midland or Houston, and you almost rarely, we're trained in geology to like do field work and look at samples and everything's sort of at the surface, and then you're sort of plunged into this world where you're not even going to look at a rock. Maybe you'll look at some cuttings from a hole or
yeah,
something at best, some
yeah,
soil samples, I suppose. But really,
yeah,
you're trying to like see what this whole world looks like, thousands of feet down, and what the architecture is, and where that resource is, and it's
yeah.
interesting,
Yeah, all today via a computer.
right?
So that's probably a point we should elaborate on a little bit here, because um, most of us, myself included, one of the things we loved about the idea of majoring in geology was, hey, if I'm a geologist, I won't have to work at an office
I
or
get to
sit
be
at a desk.
outside.
I can be outside like you actually are.
Yeah.
And I can work outside and hike around, look at rocks, and do that sort of a job, which is a big draw for a lot of us. And it's absolutely true in the oil industry. You'll get to see and describe cores, so that actual rock drilled from you know 5, 10, 15, 20,000 feet depth, and you'll describe, the stratigraphy of the core just like you would measuring sections if you're doing
Mm-hmm.
field work, only you're doing it on a, like a 4-inch diameter core, or it can be various dimensions, but generally about that. And, so you get to look at some rocks, but most of the subsurface analysis that you do these days is done on the computer with the well logs and the
Seismic refraction. Yeah.
yeah, quantitative data from engineering and from the petrophysical logs themselves, and you do
So
calculations and
yeah, so it's a lot of, just sorry to interrupt there, but it's a lot of indirect, like interpretive data. I mean, the well log is
right,
an actual sample. That's telling you what's down there, direct
right,
data,
right,
versus seismic refraction or resistivity or something like that,
right,
which is something you're interpreting. You're like, well, I
right.
see this trend. It probably means this, but you don't know for sure. Is that a fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely right. And, you and on these exploration teams, the geologist would work hand in hand with a geophysicist who's actually doing the interpretation of the seismic data, which is the other subsurface data, along with all the, well logs and other things that I mentioned previously. You integrate those data sets together to strengthen your interpretation of the seismic,
Mm-hmm.
which the seismic allows you to extend your reach and your evaluation beyond where you actually have wells, where you have some hard data of what the subsurface looks like. The seismic allows you to look beyond that. And if you've tied the wells to that seismic data, then you know what characteristics in the seismic data mean what
Yeah.
geologically, lithologically, whatever the case may be. And then you can say, okay, look, I think we see the same reservoir way over here, and there's nobody's drilled that. And look, there's a big structure. That's where we should be.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So what's the, it sounds like you're doing a lot of different things. Did you find it satisfying from a professional standpoint that did you feel like you were getting a lot of your day-to-day tasks were really diverse and that it was intellectually stimulating?
Most of the, for most of my career, I felt very fortunate to always be in a situation where I felt like I was getting to learn something new on a regular basis. And and we can talk a little bit later about a transition I went through 2/3 of the way through my career, which really enhanced that. But yeah, I think it's very intellectually satisfying type of work to do because it scratches any creative
Mm-hmm.
itches that you have as a scientist because you're really interpreting and understanding and mapping the subsurface and you're one of the reasons you're paid well as a geologist in the industry is to apply your geologic knowledge to this hard data
Mm-hmm.
and interpret something that makes geologic sense, that
Right.
has a reasonable chance of being correct and thereby leading you and the company to drill a successful well.
Do they tend to move, like geologists such as yourself, around a little bit, such that, I guess what I'm getting at here is, if we put Tony in the Permian Basin and he's there for 5, 10, and we're going on 15 years, is it advantageous to leave you there because now you know that system really well? Or does the company worry about you kind of getting bored and burn out? And so it's like, hey, let's bounce Tony over to this other system, new rocks, maybe new traps, and give him something novel and fresh.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question, and it's a spot on question. It's exactly the sort of a balance the companies need to consider with their geoscientists. They want them to have a broad enough experience because the more experience you have in different basins, different geologic settings, the more honed your exploration skills and interpretive skills become, and you become just a better explorer. By the same token, they don't want to move you around too much because there's an immense amount of value that comes from getting to know a basin so well that when
You're an
somebody
expert.
says,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
you become an expert in your basin, and somebody talks about this well, 8 miles away from where you drilled, and you know that well, you can name it, you know how deep it is, you know what formations they tested, you know what they got out of the test without even looking it up in the databases.
Yeah.
That level of detailed experience within a basin also makes you a lot more valuable and more successful as an explorer or developer. And so the companies, I think, try to sort of balance that. And a lot of it has to do also, which I think is a good thing, with the preference of the geoscientist. Some, like to learn and explore in the space, and they're ready to move on and do something else, and they're ready
Right.
they're ready to go international and try some foreign basins and some foreign countries. I never worked international. Well, it's not quite true. I did work some Mexico onshore, basically just moving across the border from my
Yeah.
usual onshore stomping grounds. But see, some people really enjoy getting to making their career a global experience, and that is one great um, draw for jobs in the oil industry. If you are successful enough and show the right sort of skill sets and propensities for success and taking on risk and tough tough situations and areas, you can go on a tour of the world. There's
Yeah.
big oil companies have jobs in Venezuela and the Middle East and Africa and South America and you know,
Yeah. Just
just
all
pretty
over the
much
place.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere. Um, like I said, I remained, I think, largely through personal preference, onshore domestic uh, positions, and enjoyed just becoming an expert in U.S. basins.
Right.
Um, and so it kind of depends a lot on the personal preference of the individual as well.
Yeah. How well do you feel like, you went to school, Florida State, then BYU, and then Texas
Texas A&M.
A&M.
Yeah.
How did, so being in school classes, even your master's thesis, how well did that prepare you, like once you were in the industry? And I know you had your internship, but I'm wondering, was it a smooth transition between the academic world and academic geology? And okay, here's how this actually like makes money and this works in the real world, or was there a lot of stuff for you to learn to kind of fill in that knowledge gap?
Well, so I'll go back to my comment about wanting to, excuse me, get into the oil patch for that master's degree, for the professional degree. And I think, my thesis was a subsurface thesis because I was at an oil patch school. The
Right.
majority of the theses coming out of Texas A&M are core studies. So
Right. So very much
they
applied to that
very
industry.
much,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of laying the carpet from academia into the
Hmm.
oil industry
And I
job.
imagine all your classes you took at the graduate level were like, okay, like sedimentology, basin analysis. They were totally like skewed and,
Right,
and focused on that kind of
right,
pathway.
right. Now I did have in graduate school, I had a geodynamics class, so plate tectonics and
Right.
really high end stuff. And I took a hydrology class because I was interested in just kind of dabbling out there and starting. So there's those opportunities are there if you want to remain as broad as possible. But at an oil patch school, you can certainly focus your course load very much and tune it very much to what would look good on a oil industry resume.
Right.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
So there was I alluded to it earlier. I went through a transition actually uh, shortly after coming to BP in Houston, where I changed disciplines basically mid-career, 20 years in actually. Not long after arriving at BP in Houston, I started to feel a little stale in my the role that I've been doing for the last 15 plus years, 15, 16, 17, as I went through the next couple of years at BP. And I thought, I feel like I really need something new,
Yeah.
radically different rather than making the subsurface maps and prospect, there was a variety of reasons why I got to that point, but I just felt like I needed some rejuvenation. I'd gotten stale. And I looked into the company's environmental group, and I thought, well, maybe within the oil industry, I could actually learn the environmental business because they had a whole group,
Right.
which I don't think ARCO had, BP did have.
And what kind of
And
work did they do there? Like what
they were associated with, cleanup sites, a large part
remediation?
of
Yeah.
remediation type stuff. BP, when they acquired ARCO, also obviously got all ARCO's assets, which included their mine. They had acquired Anaconda mining company
So some hard rock stuff.
in the
Yeah.
70s or early 80s or something. And most of those mining sites were just Superfund sites out in Montana by the time BP acquired them. So their environmental group was working on the Anaconda properties and and anywhere where there's environmental issues, they had a group of specialists. So I thought, well, maybe that's it. And then out of the blue, uh, a one of the onshore managers, he was the manager of the onshore exploration team, and, so not one of the groups that worked specific development areas, but the exploration team that looked for new stuff in the onshore U.S. He came to me and said, I don't know why he came to me. I've yet to know the story behind it, but he came to me and said, would you like to train to become a petroleum systems analyst and then join our exploration team and be our analyst, our petroleum systems analyst? I said, what is it?
Yeah.
You know,
That was one of my
and
questions. What is it?
yeah,
How?
yeah. And so um, I learned. I meet. I said I was interested, and one of the ways I learned what it is was I took the BP in-house petroleum systems training course. Kind of petroleum systems 101 kind of training course. I took that, kind of see just how I felt about it, and so petroleum systems analysis is basin modeling, so thermal evolution, burial
Mhm.
histories, thermal evolution of the basin. During that burial history, what do the source rocks go through as you unravel the thermal history of the basin? Do the source rocks reach the oil window or the gas window? Are they overcooked? Are they undercooked? If they're in a good hydrocarbon window, where does the oil and gas migrate to? So it's migration paths. Do the migration paths go the direction of your prospects you're planning to
Right.
drill? So these are all the conventional petroleum systems type of questions that you answer by doing petroleum systems analysis.
So it's more of
And
a big picture kind of view, it sounds like. And
yeah, it's jump out instead of working postage stamp right at the scale of the prospects. It's understand the whole basin where
right.
the specs are and say and determine for the exploration team, are your prospect groups of prospects even in the right place in the basin
Yeah.
to enhance your chances of finding petroleum
Interesting.
based on understanding the maturity of the source rock and where the fluids are going to migrate once they're generated and expelled from the source rock, all those sorts of
So it
things.
probably involves like, another level of like data. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you're going from like the smaller, just a regional scale
right.
prospect or play. Now you're looking at like the bigger system. And so you've got to incorporate all sorts
Right.
of data.
Right. You're interested in geothermal gradient data
Mm-hmm.
and a whole host of, lots of geochemical data. I had to become an expert in source rock geochemistry. I didn't have any organic chemistry in school.
Right.
I learned it on the job. I bought a textbook and read the textbook cover to cover of the geochemistry textbook. And so all and what I found as I took that course and dug into this was fascinating
So this is
stuff.
just what you needed
Just
when you were kind of
just what I
stalling in
needed.
your career. This was the little kind of
Yeah,
jump
it was
start you needed.
perfect. It was perfect. I mean, I literally jumped out of bed every day to go to work. I was loving it so
Well,
much.
that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and um, the thing about it is when you step back and look at the bigger picture, understanding the whole basin, it kind of took me back and made me think, this is what I love so much about igneous petrology. We did the pet. I can't even think about the igneous terms as much anymore, but we had to think of the perigenesis.
Mm-hmm.
How does this igneous rock come to be? And to get to that point, you have to understand the tectonic history and
Yeah.
and
Like all the
and kind of
processes that are interrelated. Yeah.
right, kind of base and scale type work. And I thought this is what I really loved in undergraduate school is understanding this big picture of how this part of the world came to be
Mm-hmm.
geologically. And this was kind of that in the petroleum industry. So it really, really just really rejuvenated my interest in my work and relit that fire for learning something new on the job. And so from that point on, I kind of made that transition roughly 2005. So the BP merger was 2000. And by 2005, I'd transitioned into this petroleum analyst job. And so from 2005, so for the last 15, 16 years of my career, I was a petroleum systems analyst and got to do that kind of work. The other serendipitous thing about that was there's a couple of important things about being a petroleum systems analyst that I think would be of interest, given the narrative we've been going through. First of all, at BP, and this is a large international oil company, so I assume it's similar at other large companies. There's only, even though there's hundreds of geoscientists in the company, there's only a handful, a few tens of petroleum systems analysts. So from the time I became a petroleum system analyst to the time I retired, I never worried about another reorg. They continue to happen every so often at roughly the same rate.
Yeah.
But suddenly, as petroleum systems analyst, I didn't care. I
You
didn't
were
worry
kind of
about
off
it.
limits. Yeah. Like they kept those people in place.
Too few of us, so I just wasn't at risk at
Right.
all. So that was really neat.
Yeah. So does the analyst, I guess I could see this going one of two ways, either the analyst or analysts that are looking at the big picture system, are they the ones that are kind of calling the shots and dictating where the focus is, or does it work the other way where the company's already drilling holes and things are happening and then they're looking at it and kind of making corrections and making future recommendations? Does it go one way or the other?
Yeah, so it depends on what part of the company you're actually working in, but the gamut covers everything you just said.
Yeah.
So petroleum systems analysts who are in rank wildcat type basin, rank exploration type basins, their work is critical. Job one, to lay the groundwork first to say, okay, here's the sub area within the basin that you can look for your traps.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere else didn't get any petroleum charge, and here's the basin model that proves it.
Right.
But you're good to go if you keep your search in this area. So
yeah, it's kind of quality control in a way, I guess. Just kind of making sure you're
maybe it's a quarter of the basin or something that
Yeah.
you need to stay focused on that. And so that all the way to there's petroleum systems analyst type work in production and development type work where one of the other skill sets that I sort of mentioned that I had to come up to speed on was geochemistry. So geochemistry of source rocks and understanding geochemistry of oil and of gas and to some extent of subsurface waters as well. But in the production and development end of the business, you have to collect and analyze and interpret geochemistry data. So I had to learn basically organic geochemistry as it applies to source rocks and petroleum and be able to apply it to solve problems in production and development in areas that we're already drilling, but we're getting surprises by the types of oils we're getting. Hey, we didn't expect it to be a thick, heavy oil. This should have been a condensate. What's going on? And you still kind of understand the geochemical side of the petroleum systems analysis. So I found the geochemistry is one of the most fascinating, new things to me. When I made that switch, I learned kind of a whole new science in my last 15 years and became, I can't claim expertise as a geochemist by any stretch. I mean, never had a course in school, but through on-the-job training and my own personal study that I, made myself go through to get myself feeling comfortable in my own competence to do the job, I got a certain level of working expertise that people relied on me to provide that input in the problems that came up in development and production as well. So it was just a fascinating and great sort of mid to late career transition that kind of took me sprinting all the way to the finish.
Right.
And so it was a great experience.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, I mean, I can just tell you're just glowing that you've kind of had a rewarding career. You enjoyed what you did. I think you enjoyed the challenges and all the opportunities. So this has been like really a pleasure to get to know more, not just about you, but just how this kind of industry works. Maybe kind of wrapping up, Tony, What are some like? What do you think the most important? That's kind of a two-part question. What do you think the most important hard skills and soft skills are for
Yeah.
someone going into that line of work?
Yeah. So I gave that just a little bit of thought and review of what my thinking was. As I get farther and farther away from the career, I have to think a minute. And yeah, if I were advising someone young, either already targeting and coming into the industry or just early in the schooling and thinking about it, what I would have done different in school is that would apply to the environment these younger people are in today is um, I would get more chemistry and geochemistry than just the basic requirements. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I took no geochemistry in school. I would have taken at least, basic geochemistry. And, if you can, sort of gird up your loins, take geochemistry and organic
Mm-hmm.
chemistry,
Right.
and real, organic because you're targeting the petroleum industry. So
Yeah.
that would,
Hydrocarbons. Yeah.
so in retrospect, again, particularly because I went through that transition as a petroleum systems analyst, I needed a lot more chemistry than I had, and so I had to do a lot of remedial stuff on my own. So chemistry, geochemistry would be my advice.
Mm-hmm.
Get some good exposure to those topics. The other thing is, and this is interesting because when I came out of school, as I said earlier, we made maps. Everybody all the geologists in the company, we made our maps with a pencil and an eraser and paper and uh, you know layers of paper and that we can see through and
Sheets of
do
mylar. Yeah.
sheets of mylar and all
Yeah.
that. And it was great fun. I loved it. Again, it was sort of another uh, bit of creativity that you kind of enjoyed. And to this day, I think handmade maps are more aesthetically beautiful and maybe just maybe more accurate than computer
Right.
generated maps. That being said, uh, computers.
Yeah.
This is now more than ever a digital job in the petroleum industry. You have to know computers. You have to be able to learn new software quickly. As someone who came into the industry before that took hold, that transition was a little painful and difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually got there to a level of competence with the computer world and the applying using computer software to do my job as a subsurface geologist. I got there, but there was some time in there where it was a struggle. And if I had, I mean, I just didn't have, nobody took computer classes when I was in school.
Yeah. Well, and you were. I mean, I think your career was spanning a time period where that was all happening so fast. Like computers
Yeah,
were advancing and developing so quickly, and it was going out into the industry, and
right,
it was hard for everyone to keep up. I think so.
right. So anyway, just being, you probably don't even have to tell young people that today
Right. Yeah. It's
to be computer literate. I mean, they do it just innately now,
yeah.
but I would say, be more deliberate and purposeful in your desire to pick up computer tools, skill
Right.
set, things you can put in your tool belt, as it were. So the ability to learn new software is vital these days, more vital than ever. And and I think just in the 5 years since I retired, there's been a whole new revolution going on in the digital world as we move into this AI influence.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know what's going on with AI in my old job, but I doubt if I could be hired for my own
Right.
job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't qualify based on the level
Yeah.
of digital skills you need these days.
I think you sell yourself short. I think you'd still be a qualified applicant, and you, if nothing, you've proven to be resilient and willing to learn the new whatever the new steep
Oh,
learning curve is. I mean, I think that's an important soft skill, is just being able to like, hey,
yeah,
I'm deficient here. I'm self-aware enough to know where I'm weak, and I
yeah,
gotta shore up that part of my kind of skill set. So
right.
yeah.
And I think that's probably a lesson. I've told this to my kids too. Um, y- y- Throughout your career, you have to be willing to learn something new always be looking to learn something new, always be looking to learn a new skill set
Hmm.
that makes you more valuable to the company.
Yeah.
Going back to the whole deal about reorgs and layoffs that occur periodically in the industry, the more tools you have in your tool belt, the more skill sets you have, the more marketable you are, both within your current job, current company, and if you happen to lose a job when you are out looking for
Right.
the next job, and you'll get a next job, but there can be some moments, some periods of pain in between, but the more skill sets you have and that you've developed, the better off you are. So constantly, continuous learning is sort of a watchword that went on starting early in my career, and used to read a lot about it in the AAPG literature stuff, continuous learning and the
Yeah.
value of that.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. So, well, this has been great, Tony. I just appreciate you taking time to just explain your career to us, like a pretty fascinating turn of events. And I think for young students that are kind of up and coming, this will give them a little glimpse into how the oil and gas works and how your career works. And even just for folks just interested, gives them a nice little kind of snapshot into your career. So thank you so much again for taking time today. This has been great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, take care, Tony. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, take care. Bye bye.
Yep.